You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Welcome to the NY Patriot Show. What is up, everybody? In this week's episode, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Megan again from 7 Degrees of Wisdom. If this is your first time hearing this guest on my show, I highly suggest to go back to the Occult Rejects and check out the 7-part tarot series that we did with her. I was very proud to do that series, and we also had Mario from Symbolic Studies on there with us as well. So, yeah, definitely go check that out if you have never seen any of Megan's other work on the show. And she has been on the NY Patriot Show also many times in the past. At least 2 or 3 times already.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of something that I came to her with an idea after I had her on, I think, once or twice. I felt that we click very well when it comes to talking about magic, and I enjoy working with her. And I had a few ideas that I wanted to run past her because there's not too many people. I think, when it comes to magic and witchcraft or occultism, that I can actually have on that practiced or practices and has that experience. So I'm very limited to people like that I can work with. And, and there was just some things that I wanted to cover that for us would be very basic, or, not that this stuff is basic. It's just that it should be easy for us kind of to present a basic, I guess, covering of these topics to people who have never heard of it or never understood it. And there was a few things that I would like to start doing, like maybe books or actual rituals, and it is not to teach people how to do them. It's just more of, I think, of awareness. In the conspiracy community, or I guess maybe even occult community, whatever you want to call it, or just the alternate media community. And I'm not saying this to personally knock anybody. It's just that I do think there is almost kind of like a brick wall that has been hit. And a lot of things are just very cut and dry. A lot of things if you were to break it down amongst most podcasts, it's going to be Freemasonry and Thelema, and that's it. It's just yeah. Well, what do you think came before that stuff, Right. There was things that influenced those people that they studied before they started making their own stuff. There's it goes back way before them or those organizations. And, and that's if we even know the truth about any of that to begin with. The Freemasons and Thelema and all these people. But, basically what I want to get at is that I want to show that there is different ideas of magic. There are different, maybe god names that people have never heard of. Maybe different sigils that you've never heard of. And again, it's not that I'm trying to teach you to use it. It's just that, maybe these things might be involved in the magic that's manipulating us. And you would never know about it because you didn't even know these things exist. Well, this stuff that you never heard about or that you did not know existed influenced people that you have heard of. So, and with that said, we'll move on to, before I move on to the Arbatel, I have to let Megan, totally forgot, sorry. I have to introduce you. Let everybody know who you are, give them your whole spiel, what you do, and let them know where they can find your stuff as well.
Hi, everyone. For you guys that haven't seen me yet, my name is Megan. I'm with 7 Degrees of Wisdom. I am a practicing occultist. I practice high magic. I am a paranormal investigator, professional tarot reader, intuitive, and a house cleanser. So I kind of run the gambit in the occult world. I teach various classes. I teach tarot classes and a whole bunch of different classes on occult subjects as well. So I'm a resident tarot reader at a couple of shops where I live, but I also can do everything that I do in person online too. So if you guys are interested, Nick's going to put all my links to my social media down in the bottom of this. So if you guys want to get a hold of me to book any services or have any questions or anything, just hit me up. glad to be here. This is going to be a fun show. I'm excited about this one because I have my own theories that I'm going to talk about too about the Arbatel. So it's going to be a great show.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, when I asked you about it, you were like, "Oh, I had already worked on like you had these." Then some of the notes that I think you may cover, you already had that done prior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was like, "Oh, this works out great." Yeah, and I was like, "Perfect." Yeah, all her links will be in the bottom as well. I'll make sure I include them in the show notes. And quick question, and not to put you on the spot, when you do house cleansing, do you have like a specific type of incense you tend to prefer to use? I'm just wondering.
It just depends. Like, I mean, everybody's go-to is sage and Palo Santo. So, I mean, but the thing about sage is that it clears all energy, positive and negative. So you got to bring something positive back in. So I usually use Palo Santo or sweetgrass when I do that. I also use sound and frequency along with my magic to cleanse and put up barriers and blocks, depending on what's there.
Yeah,
So
I've done
usually
that,
it's a case-by-case basis. I'll have to just evaluate and see what's in there, and most of the time it's nothing too bad. So I don't have to, go and do anything drastic usually.
I love Palo. That stuff smells so good.
Yeah.
I used to use tinctures sometimes to actually to ring throughout the air. Yeah, it's interesting that I haven't thought about ringing something actually for that reason.
Yeah.
Memories. And something I wanted to ask, and I'm like, oh, maybe you do prescribe to this, and I just found it as like a silly thing that's in magic, or I've thought it's silly to myself. Do you make sure that the windows are open when you do this?
Yeah, afterwards. Yes.
And
when I'm pushing the energy out.
All right, so
there's like a process that I go through.
No,
on an energetic level.
I do understand that. It's just the thing is that like when they came in, did the window have to be open?
No.
So why does it have to be open to get them to leave?
Because of the smoke. Because most people don't want to.
Oh, yeah, I know, but I've watched people like legit in like Facebook groups or on things like specify you need to have the windows open for them to leave, and I'm like, well, did that mean that they had to be open for them to come in? Like, so every time I invoked Isis or Hathor or Thoth, if my window wasn't open, it didn't happen? Like, you know what I'm saying?
No, you're correct. You're correct. I do it.
But he's a god except for glass. He can't get through glass.
Yeah. It's a dimension thing. They can come in whether your windows are open or closed. It doesn't matter.
No, I'm just joking with you. I'm joking with you.
No, but still, you're right. No, you're completely right. Yeah.
No, but to get rid of the smoke, I mean, that does make sense because I was even going to ask you, too. That's even things that I've seen some people do. I've never really gone crazy with it myself, but I've seen some people that, like, when they smoke it out, like, they will have, like, almost like this contraption that you can, like, shake. That, like, as you're just going through the air, it's creating tons of smoke. Like, I've seen some people, like, smoke the hell out of places.
Yeah.
Even during ritual work, which, if, my thoughts on why you have a hood in the AA with no mouthpiece, if the whole thing behind that is to take away oxygen, then I could understand why some of these dudes are smoking the fuck out of their rooms. Because, again, you're removing oxygen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've seen some people, it's like, yo, how do you even breathe in that? But,
it can get pretty thick.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that. I was just wondering.
You're good.
Because I was a big fan of Palo, too, actually, for banishing and cleansing. Yep. Yeah. All right, so now we'll get into the Arbatel 9 minutes in. Sorry about that, people. You already know how I roll. I'm just going to read some basic info. I'm not saying it's totally correct. I'm not saying that, Megan might even have something different to say about it. I'm just going to read off some of the basic info that is out there on this. And the Arbatel, it's the Arbatel de Magia Veterum. I'm probably screwing that all up. I'm just going to keep calling it the Arbatel. All right, is a Latin grimoire of Renaissance ceremonial magic, and they seem to think or have decided that it was published around, I'm not going to say definitely, 1575. I think that's just kind of like a date that has been agreed upon, maybe. Or I could be wrong. A.E. White assumes that title is from Hebrew. The Arbatel is noted for being straightforward in its writing, positive in its context, and unusually honest regarding its origins. While a number of occult works claim to be from earlier periods and other regions than they were actually published, textual evidence demonstrates that the book must have been written between 1536 and 1583, which encompasses the claimed date of 1575. The final editing of the book was likely carried out by Theodore Zwinger, and most definitely published by Pietro Perner, leaving little doubt to the book's claimed Swiss origin. The author remains unknown, but Peterson believes one Jacques Gohori, 1520 to 1576, to be the most likely possibility. Gory, like Zwinger and Perner, was a I think you would probably know how to say this better than me.
Paracelsian.
Yes. And that's because I know you go in that direction yourself.
Yeah.
Some German manuscripts produced shortly after its publication attribute the work to Paracelsus.
Paracelsus.
Yes. Though without evidence. Just real quick, that guy Theodore Zwinger the Elder was a Swiss physician and Renaissance humanist scholar. He made significant contributions to the emerging genres of reference and travel literature. He was the first distinguished representative of a prominent Basel academic family. I thought it was interesting, he's a physician and he's interested in occultism. I guess I just kind of found that interesting a little bit.
Yeah.
And then real quick, just to let people know also, the Olympic spirits are in this book, or the Olympian spirits. And just to quickly go over that, and I will cover them a little bit more as we get into the book. The Olympian spirits, or Olympic spirits, and that could even be Olympic with a CK, depends, I've seen it written different ways, refers to 7 or sometimes 14 spirits mentioned in several Renaissance and post-Renaissance books of ritual magic and ceremonial magic, such as the Arbatel, the secret grimoire of Turiel, if I'm saying that correctly, and the complete book of magic science. And if I remember correctly, too, I could be wrong, but Cornelius Agrippa, or however you say his name, Agrippa, he had a 4-book series. I know, like, a lot of the times you can get the first 3 books together, and people do question the authenticity of the 4th book, if it was really written by the same person, etc., etc. But this book, I do think, is actually reprinted in that book, too. I mean, in that book is old as shit. So, it's still old. And I do find that interesting.
I'm gonna have to check that out because I have all of them.
Yeah, I find that interesting that this book back then was basically republished in somebody else's magic book. They must have thought it was interesting or worth mentioning. But yeah, just to give people the idea, it does have 7 Olympian spirits, and we will get into them as the book goes on. I'm going to pull up the PDF real quick. Show you all that. We have here the Magic of the Ancients, the greatest study of wisdom. And then the Arbatel of Magic, translated by Robert Turner, 1655. Converted to Acrobat format by Benjamin Rowe, August 1999. The Arbatel of Magic, or the spiritual wisdom of the ancients, as well wise men of the people of God, as magi of the Gentiles, for the illustration of the glory of God and his love to mankind. Now first of all produced out of darkness into the light, against all Keiko magicians and contemners of the gifts of God, for the profit and delectation of all those who do truly and piously love the creatures of God, and do use them with thanksgiving to honor of God and profit of themselves and their neighbors. And translated into English by Robert Turner, London, 1655. I'm not going to go too much into the book because, I mean, there's a lot here. And if you're interested in it, you can go find it for free online. It's real easy. It does have a it says Arbatel of Magic containing 9 tomes and 7 septenaries of aphorisms, however you say that. And for people who don't know what that is an aphorism, is a concise or memorable expression of a general truth or principle. They are often handed down by tradition from generation to generation. Often, aphorisms are distinguished from other short sayings by the need for interpretation to make sense of them. So, again, that kind of like sounds like a cult in itself, or like an archetype, trying to explain an archetype to me.
Yeah.
So, it has all that in it. I'm going to read, and then it has like the first aphorism, the second, and it has the first septenary of it. There's all these in here. I'm going to read maybe 2 of them. I'll read the first one, and I'll read the 17th one. Whosoever would know secrets, let him know how to keep secret things secretly, and to reveal those things that are to be revealed, and to seal those things which are ever to be sealed, and not to give holy things to dogs, nor cast pearls before swine. Observe this law, and the eyes of thy understanding shall be opened, to understand secret things, and thou shalt have whatsoever thy mind desireth, to be divinely revealed unto thee. Thou shalt have also the angels and spirits of God, prompt and ready in their nature to minister unto thee, as much as any human mind can desire. I'm just reading some of them too, just so you get an idea of how it's written. Even though this is a translation, I'm sure it's not completely on point from the way it was originally written. And then here's 17. Magically, the princes of the 7 governments are called simply in that time, day, and hour wherein they rule visibly or invisibly, by their names and offices which God hath given unto them, and by proposing their character which they have given or confirmed. The governor Aratron hath in his power those things which he doth naturally, that is, after the same manner and subject in those things which in astronomy are ascribed to the powers of Saturn. So now in all that mumbo jumbo, they're telling you that this dude is associated with Saturn, which I will get to. I guess I'll get into that now before we go into stuff that Megan has. We'll just cover real quick the gods that are in here. Aratron, or however you want to pronounce it, Aratron, governs those things which are ascribed astrologically to Saturn. He can convert any living organism, plant, or animal into stone, and that in a moment of time. He can also change coals into treasure and treasure into coals. He gives familiars and reconciles subterranean spirits to men. He teaches alchemy, magic, and medicine, imparts the secret of invisibility, and makes the barren fruitful, and lastly confers long life. Bethor, who commanded 29,000 legions of spirits, he rules 42 provinces. His planet is Jupiter. The affairs of Jupiter are administered by Bethor, who responds quickly when called. The person dignified by his character may be exalted to illustrious positions and may obtain large treasures. He reconciles the spirits of air to man so that they will give true answers. transport precious stones, and compose medicines having miraculous effects. Bethor also grants familiars of the firmament and can prolong life to 700 years, subject to the will of God, which qualification imparts an air of caution. Phalek or Phaleg, the warlord, his planet is Mars. He rules 35 provinces. Phaleg governs the things that are attributed to Mars. The person who possesses his character is raised by him to great honor in military affairs. Och, or OCH, the alchemist, physician, and magician. He rules 28 provinces. His planet is the sun. Solar interests are administered by Och, who prolongs life to 600 years, with perfect health therein. He imparts great wisdom, gives excellent spirits, composes perfect medicines, converts any substance into the purest of metals or into precious stones. He also bestows gold and a purse. Quaintly described by the English translator of the Arbatel as springing with gold, he causes the possessor of his character to be worshipped as a god by the kings of the whole world. Haggith, transmuter of metals and commander of 4,000 legion of spirits. He rules 21 provinces. His planet is Venus. The government of venereal concerns is entrusted to Haggith, and the person possessing his character is adorned with all beauty. He converts copper into gold in a moment, and gold instantaneously into copper. He also gives faithful serving spirits. Ophiel, who commanded 100,000 legions of spirits, he rules 14 provinces. His planet is Mercury. Ophiel is the ruler of those things which are attributed to Mercury. He gives familiar spirits, teaches all arts, and enables the possessor of his character to change quicksilver immediately into the Philosopher's Stone. And last but not least, we have, Phul, a Phul, Lord of the powers of the moon and supreme Lord of the waters. He rules 7 provinces. His planet is the moon. Lunary concerns are under the government of Phul, who truly transmutes all metals into silver, heals dropsy, and provides spirits of the water, who serve men in corporal and visible form. He prolongs life to 300 years. And that is basically what I got for all of those guys. I unfortunately wasn't showing all the sigils as I was going through it. We'll put them up on the screen now and be going through them. But that was really all I wanted to cover. I wanted to give a basic idea of, supposedly what is the history behind this book. I read a little bit so you can understand, how it was written, how it even sounds old, and that there is, in my opinion, these sigils that are in here for these, gods or things that you're calling upon. Odds are, unless you knew of this book, you probably have never seen these before. So I just think it's interesting to know that there are these sigils or these artistic ways of showing something to do with occultism that you don't see everybody pointing at, you know what I'm saying, or everybody, talking about. So, maybe it's out there, maybe it's not, I don't know. I don't know if it's still a mainstream thing totally, but I just wanted to, show that there is other types of sigils and things out there than mainstream conspiracy and occultism seems to acknowledge.
Yeah, and I've seen people modify these. It's very hard to actually find the originals when you're Googling them in an image search.
Yes,
it was very, very hard because people are going to take this stuff and they're going to change it and make their own personal sigils, and then they're going to post that. So to get down to the truth of these real, the original sigils that were originally written, it's quite hard. So I'll kind of go over that too a little bit later. But basically, guys, this is if you're practicing the occult and ceremonial magic, you're going to come across choirs of angels, the hierarchies. Basically, this is the same thing. It's just quite different, and this one is a little bit older. So everything that you see today used in modern magic came from books like this, like the Arbatel. Even John Dee studied this book. Paracelsus, we'll get to him a little bit later. So basically what the Arbatel is it's a book of sigils, really similar to if you're studying angelic beings. It's the same thing, how they have their sigils. Well, this is kind of the same thing, but these ones are more of a Greek nature. So that's why they look different from, sigils that you find today that have more Enochian in them as well.
Some of these, I think, look also very, I don't want to say very motherboardish or computerish, but like it seems very...
no, they're very binary.
Yes, yeah, to me. Which is something that I found like is very interesting with that. I mean, even like, the whole thing with sometimes with the sigils, like this circle at the end, like I understand like some people may not realize when you go to draw a sigil, you can start it off with the circle and then you end with like a line. Even stuff like that starts making me think of like solder points on motherboards and making connections and stuff. It's just very weird.
Yeah. So this could be, you could even go far as to say that this is like the basis or foundation of the Matrix. They just tapped into some of these parts.
Or how do we not know like these aren't like configurations with inside AI?
We have no idea.
You know what I'm saying? It's so weird. No.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you could go all kinds of ways with this stuff.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna remove this, and do you want me to pull up your thing? Or do you want to? Do you got stuff you want to ramble on first before you?
Well,
pull up
let
stuff?
me just kind of read from my notes first a little bit, and then I'll share some things with you guys because I made some connections. So when I go down these rabbit holes, I start to make connections, and then I come up with my own theories. So what I'm saying is just like proposed idea. Once I get to my theory, I'm not saying that it's truth. It's just my intuition and the dots that I put together from years of academic occult study. So basically the Arbatel of Magic, it's called Arbatel de Magi Veterum. So veterum means chronic, long-lasting, or ancient in Latin. So what they're saying is that this is very old information that was passed down. So like Nick said, it's a Latin grimoire from Renaissance ceremonial magic. So Adolf Jacobi believed the name to be a reference to the Tetragrammaton. So the Tetragrammaton, let me scroll down here.
And that even kind of goes into like the four letters for like God too, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
You know how they attribute it to, like I was saying before, for God or for and the T and God.
Yes.
It's just, going with the Tetragrammaton, you get the Yod He Vade. Again, you have like a four letters for God. And I just...
Yes. I thought I had more on that in here. Okay, so the Tetragrammaton, or four-letter Hebrew theonym, transliterated as Yahweh, so YHWH, the name of God in Hebrew Bible. The four letters written and read from right to left in Hebrew are Yod He, Vod He. The name may be derived from a verb that means to be or to exist. Okay, so there's that. So I think that this book was written by somebody who is a Paracelsian or practice Paracelsianism. So this is theorized to be Jacques Cahori, who you mentioned. He did the final editing, and then Theodore Zwinger and Perna, who were also Paracelsians. So that's their connection, was they studied Paracelsus. So they had kind of a hand in this book as well. So when you brought them up, that's the connection there.
Yeah.
So this book is said to be the first work done on theosophy itself.
Yes.
The Rosicrucians and John Dee studied this. Okay, and so I'm sure you guys know, if you're into the occult at all, you know who John Dee was. He was Elizabeth the first personal astronomer and musician, and Rudolf Steiner also studied this. The book was considered the foundational practice and study of all orders that later practiced magic on down the line. So this is a book that you're going to study if you're in an order, a secret order, unless you stumble across it. These days, there's so much information now that we can find everywhere. It didn't used to be that way. Even up like before the 70s and 80s, you couldn't find stuff like this. It was extremely obscure. But now that we have the internet, we have all this information widely available. But back in the day, this book would have been one of the core study subjects if you were in an order.
Sometimes, like some old grimoires, I mean, they say it's quite possible that there's actually very few of those written, because like you were paying somebody to actually write those for you, or somebody was traveling to hand you that book. And the whole thing in it too is that, like, you know, a lot of even reputable people in ceremonial magic community will even say the problem with that is, and they will say they think there is some out there, you have to worry about getting grimoires that somebody just scammed somebody with and ended up becoming popular.
Yeah, and I'm
you
sure
know, because it's
happened.
like you could have just scanned somebody and made them believe you were a magician and handed them some woo-woo sounding stuff in a book, and they gave you money for it because they thought it was legit.
Stranger things have happened.
You know, and then it gets found and considered real.
Yeah.
You know, or there might be like a lot of blinds in there, or not like full. You know what I'm saying? It could have been legit, but they may not trust the book. It just may not be 100%.
Right, and none of us were alive in the 1500s, so we don't. I mean, none of us really know, right? And you know that over time, how people will take things and then they'll expand on it and learn it, just like magicians do when you're practicing. You start to, you know, when you get your rituals down, then you start to modify them and you start to do different things.
Yeah, I was going to say 5 years later,
like
you can change your stuff and be like, you know what? I don't even think that was even right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even as a magician, they can even be like, you know what? That might have even been wrong.
Yeah, so that's how things get mistranslated or changed down the road. So, yeah, I'm sure things have gotten changed since the 1500s, right? But if we don't study all this, we can't go down the rabbit holes and figure out what's the real deal and what's not. So I brought up the word Paracelsus. So Paracelsus was... he studied all the Greek works. So the Greek developed and rediscovered sacred geometry through this study. So that's what kind of caught my eye. I'm super into sacred geometry, and I use it and I incorporate it in my ritual magic. And so that's why this fascinated me, because if you look at those sigils that Nick just showed you, they're very geometric in shape. We talked about them being binary, but they're very geometric. Okay, so like during meditations and magical practices, I've actually seen these type of shapes in my mind's eye. So shapes like this will come up when you start to work with this stuff. And so that's what really piqued my interest about this, was that there was sacred geometry involved. And I definitely for sure think that these sigils were actually downloads from him, the guy that wrote this book, and the people that wrote it. That's my theory. I think he received this information. Crowley's done the same thing. He received information during magical practice. I think this is a common thing around people that practice magic. You receive these kind of downloads. I know this may sound crazy to a lot of you guys, but magicians that practice, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say you receive like these downloaded information.
Sometimes it's almost as if like a movie screen is being projected behind your eye.
Yes, exactly. So these are the connections of my theory that I kind of pieced together.
Real quick, I hate to interrupt you, just something I want to mention about the sigils.
Yeah.
And like you said, very binary, but it, like even looking at them and just showing them real quick again here on here. All right, you do have that one circle there. And then like this little thing in here that obviously isn't straight, but like everything else and these, like it's mostly just all straight lines and angles.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like very different than a lot of other sigils that like.
Yeah. And who's to say these aren't partial?
Yeah.
Maybe they're just partial. Maybe you didn't receive the information of the other parts of them that overlap to make them into actual 3D geometric shapes.
Or if this is meant to look like this, I would say the fact that it's very much straight lines and not much curves to it may actually even be telling you something as well, or what kind of energy you're dealing with.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
All right, that's enough out of me. I just wanted to add that. Like, I
find
that's very interesting how there isn't much curves to their stuff. It's all lines and angles.
People have added more curves I've noticed
to make
if
it
you
more
were-
like artistic. Yes.
Yeah. So these are some things that I've pieced together. And again, guys, like this is just my theory. This is not, it's just like food for thought. Okay. When I'm like saying all this stuff. So the man who wrote the book was a Paracelsian. So Paracelsus was a man whose beliefs started with a movement and practice that they called Paracelsians. So they studied work done by the Greeks, and namely sacred geometry. The book was considered the first written on theosophy. I think I kind of went over this. Studied by John Dee and Rudolf Steiner and the Rosicrucians. Olympian spirits were called Olympian spirits because they're Greek in nature. So, and that's because of Paracelsus, because he was super into Greek philosophy at that time. He was really into all that. So I think, like I said before, that these were sacred geometry downloads. It could be from entities themselves, right? So let's talk about who Paracelsus is. So he was a German. He lived from 1493 to 1541. He was born Theophrastus von Hoppenheim. His full name is Philippus Aurelius Theophrastus Bombastus von Hemoheim. Well, that is a mouthful. First of all, yes. So he was a Swiss physician, alchemist, lay theologian, and philosopher of the German Renaissance. He was a pioneer in several aspects of the medical revolution, in quotes, of the Renaissance, emphasizing the value of observation in combination with received wisdom. So that was a thing that kind of tipped me off. He is credited as the father of toxicology. So Paracelsus also had a substantial influence as a prophet or diviner. His prognostications have been studied by Rosicrucians since the 1600s. Paracelsianism is the early modern medical movement inspired by the study of his works. As a physician of the early 16th century, he held a natural affinity for Hermetic, Neoplatonic, and Pythagorean philosophies central to the Renaissance, a worldview exemplified by Marsilio Ficino, Pico della Mirandola. Astrology was a very important part of his medicine, and he was a practicing astrologer, as were many of the university-trained physicians working at that time in Europe. So in the Renaissance era, it was very common for everybody to be in all of these subjects. Like everybody was very well versed in them. Later on, it wasn't that way, but I think that's why we got such a rich history of information from them, and why it's still studied today is because it came from all different angles to fully comprehend what they were, compiling. So he devoted several sections of his writings to the construction of the astrological talismans for curing disease. So he was actually using astrology and talismans to cure sick people. He largely rejected philosophies of Aristotle and Galen, as well as the theory of humors. Although he did accept the concept of the four elements of water, air, fire, and earth, he saw them merely as a foundation for the properties on which to build. He often viewed fire as the firmament that sat between air and water in the heavens. Paracelsus often uses an egg to help describe the elements. In his early model, he claimed that air surrounded the world like an eggshell. The egg white below the shell is like fire because it has a type of chaos to it that allows it to hold up earth and water. The earth and water make up a globe, which in term of the egg is the yolk. And Demetrius Paracelsus claims the firmament is the heavens. His approach to science was heavily influenced by his religious beliefs. He believed that science and religion were inseparable, and scientific discoveries were direct messages from God. Thus, he believed it was mankind's divine duty to uncover and understand all of his message. He also believed that the virtues that make up natural objects are not natural but supernatural and existed in God before the creation of the universe. Because of this, when the earth and the heavens eventually dissipate, the virtues of all natural objects will continue to exist and simply return to God. His philosophy about the true nature of the virtues is reminiscent of Aristotle's idea of the natural place to the elements. To Paracelsus, the purpose of science is not only to learn about the world around us, but also to search for divine signs and potentially understand the nature of God. If a person who doesn't believe in God became a physician, they would not have a better standing in God's eyes and will not succeed in their work because they don't practice in his name. So that's just a little bit about like who he was. I'm not going to keep reading. There's quite a bit more. But if you guys are interested in him, he was a fascinating human being.
It sounds like it.
He was, it's always, people don't really realize like the Renaissance magicians back in the day were super heavily religious on top of believing in the occult too. So I've always found that very interesting. Okay, so let me see what I've got. What else I got here? I think you've already went over that.
Sorry.
Okay, no, you're good. No, you are good.
Yeah, I was worried how much I would end up, saying at the beginning, but
no, you're good.
That is, something that I do find interesting is that going by some older grimoires, it would seem as if the people who wrote them also were religious besides occultists to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I always learned that the Bible is a book of magic created for kings by kings, and that's what it is. I mean...
No, I just, maybe at some point, like, occultism was a part of religion in a sense.
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I think it was the OG, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, back then we didn't have phones. You were talking about before, all these people seemed well educated. Well, I mean, what else did you have to do back then? You weren't making memes. You know what I'm saying? So you learned stuff to keep yourself busy.
Yeah, and then they come up with this mind-blowing shit,
Exactly, right?
Yeah. So I'll just go a little bit into just a little bit more, guys, and then I want to show some pictures. So Paracelsianism was especially venerated by German Rosicrucians who regarded him as a prophet and developed a field of systemic study of his writings, which is sometimes called Paracelsianism, or more rarely Paracelsusism. So Francis Bacon warned against Paracelsus and the Rosicrucians, judging that the ancient opinion that man was microcosmos has been fantastically strained by Paracelsus and the alchemists. I thought that was kind of funny. So Paracelsusism also produced the first complete edition of his works, and then it gives 1545 to 1604. This guy named Johannes Hesser of Basel gathered autographs and manuscript copies and prepared an edition in 10 volumes during 1589 to 1591. So there is more to this book than is apparent. The prophecies contained in his works on astrology and divination began to be separately edited by prognostication Theophrasti in the early 17th century. So this thing has been messed with, basically, is what this is getting at. His prediction of the Great Calamity just beginning, indicating the end times, was later associated with the 30 Years' War and the identification of Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden as the Lion from the North, and based on in one of Paracelsus' prognostications. So you got to remember, he was also a prophet too. So he was kind of like Edgar Casey, kind of like in a way. Gotcha. Where he would like say things, say information. And then one more person that everybody knows that studied Paracelsium is Carl Gustav Jung. So he was super into his stuff. He wrote 2 essays on Paracelsus, one delivered in the house in which Paracelsus was born in Einsteilen, I'm going to butcher that, in June 1929, the other to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Paracelsus' death in 1941 at Zurich. So we've got some big hitting names here, people that have studied this. So then I'm going to talk like really briefly about some sacred geometry, because I know that's connected here, okay? Because you've got the Greek influence, you're dealing with Olympian spirits, we're dealing with Greek, Pythagorean, sacred geometry. So using sacred geometry energy visualization, similar or like magic rituals, lets you connect to higher spirits or beings. So that if he was using any of these methods, which, and then these are all my words, that I think he was, because he was Greek and studied Pythagoras, the father of geometry. He developed the 5 Platonic solids, which all fit into the Metatron's cube or Merkaba. So the 3D version of Metatron's cube, this is a Merkaba shape. It's the 2 inverted triangles. This could have led to the downloads or contact with the celestial, aka angelic beings, to come up with the material or invocations in this book. So the Merkaba in sacred geometry is a tool for bringing in more light to the new living light body in crystalline matrices. In sacred geometry, the star tetrahedron, or Merkaba, sometimes spelled Merkaba, is a symbol resulting of combining 2 opposite tetrahedrons to form a Merkaba star or star tetrahedron. The Merkaba is an energy matrix surrounding the aura that strengthens and the alignment between the mind, body, and the soul. It offers protection to the user and aligns you more fully with your higher self. So that's how with my theories, I think all this is connected. And I think this book was a download, albeit a partial one, if that. So then I did a little bit more. Let me go ahead and see if I can.
I think a lot of magic books actually can really be attributed to like downloads and experiences after the fact of a magical experience.
Yes. Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, so this one right here is a page from Donald Michael Craig's Modern Magic. And I really like what he said in this paragraph about it. So he said he had trouble, and 3 years of study, he figured out that these ones are the most original and accurate. You're going to see ones that are completely different from ones that you just like Google on the internet. Okay, so this is what Donald Michael Craig said. The Book of the Arbatel of Magic is extremely rare today. It was first published in Latin in 1575 at Basel and published for the first time in English in London 1655. So it wasn't even really published in English until 1655. I found that interesting. It is supposed to contain 9 sections, but only one remains or ever existed. It is known as Isagoge, or a book of institutions of magic. In this work, with the introductory in nature, are given the so-called Olympian spirits, each with its own character symbol. There have been a few different versions of symbols associated with the names of the spirits. In the previous edition, I gave one of them. So this one is the expanded edition, by the way, this book that I have. So his original one came out in the 70s. I believe this one is expanded. After a great deal of research and thought, I have come to the conclusion that the version I gave was not the earliest version, and therefore now I would consider to be the most accurate listing of their names, symbols, and planets to which they correspond. So each one of these has a planetary correspondence. So when you're using these to invoke, it's kind of like, the associations with the Tree of Life as well. So you're going to have all your correspondences. So this is the book that I got it from.
I had the same book.
Yeah, so I will say, guys, like this book, I've read a lot of books on magic, and this one right here, if you're really looking to kind of start, this is an excellent book. I've learned more reading this book in the first few chapters than I did reading 10 other books, because they're so dry. He knows how to explain things in a way that you can understand all the facets. So I'm like a super fan of this book.
Oh, very easy to read.
Yes. Okay, and then this is the Arbatel of Magic. So you can find this. I just got this one online. You're going to see a million different covers. Mm-hmm. You just type it in if you want it, but you're going to find a million different covers. This is the one I have. Okay, so this is the one that I wanted here. Okay, so on the top here, this is the Sigil de Ameth. Okay, so this is the one that John Dee, everybody kind of gets this one and this one confused. Okay, they're 2 different things. So this is the one that John Dee and Edward Kelly came up with through, so him and Edward Kelly Edward Kelly was a psychic medium, and Dee wanted to converse with angels. Well, he didn't have that ability, so he got with Edward Kelly so that he was able to receive this information. And the information he received is this sigil here, and it's how to trap demons and use them to do your bidding, if you want, if you will. There's lots of other meanings associated with it too. So basically, I just wanted to bring this up and show the difference between this one and this one. So the one here on the bottom, I actually have a necklace with this on it. So what that one is the 7 holy archangels. And it also, if you notice, has the Arbatel symbols in there with it. And then the center circle has your planetary symbols as well. And then you have all the 7 archangels around the outside of it too.
Now, if you look at where the names are and then the sigils, even the planetary symbols is matching how they were in the Arbatel too.
Yes. So my point to showing you guys this is like this stuff is heavily used in all kinds of different things. And people, you know, if you're into ceremonial magic, you're gonna start getting into sigils and sigil making and talismans. It's a part of your practice to charge them and use them. So this is like, this stuff is also used in sigil making too. So if you didn't know that, now you know what these are. If you've seen these in the past, they come from the Arbatel. They represent the celestial entities, if you will. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what the Arbatel is about. Just like your angel correspondences, same thing that you work with. So you can actually add double power like this one does for protection and invocation, because you're using the archangels and then the other entities as well.
Yeah. And very much planetary. Like, again, I mean, they're even associating it with planets. I mean, and once you do that, I mean, you're making it real easy to start getting planetary and Kabbalistic associations out of it.
Yes.
And I think I could be wrong, but I think it was even Josephine McCarthy who had said she has her own thing out there too, her own ceremonial magic thing. She's been around for a while. I think the lady knows a thing or two. She had said herself, I think, in an interview once, that this made more sense to her once she started applying Kabbalah to it. And even a lot of grimoires, she said, that normally don't seem to so much stress that. She says these things make more sense to her once you start attributing Kabbalistic shit to it.
Yeah, it's always that way when you're practicing. Everything's so confusing, and then you got different correspondences in one version, and then another version is different correspondences. So all in all, you guys, this is just like a mixed bag of occultism that you can pull from, that's been changed and modified and redone and over time.
Yeah. I do even think like a lot of stuff that's like, you know, other, I guess, newer magicians. Sometimes it's like, you know, I think that all it is like them just creating new characters out of old ones that match.
Yes.
You know, or maybe like I made a little bit more detailed or a little bit more specific. Or maybe sometimes some are just a little bit more broader. But I do think sometimes, like, you know, a lot of it is just based off of older stuff and revamped and just changed a little bit.
Yeah. But so that's pretty much all I've got, you know, on my end as far as that goes.
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much. You know, and I had already looked at your stuff, so I knew what you were bringing, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." You know, and we did exactly what I had wanted to do. It didn't get super in depth. I think everything that we covered was understandable. You didn't have to be a genius to understand it, and it was really just, again, bringing light to other things in magic that is old, that has influenced, like we're showing right here. Influenced others that have influenced others.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So
yeah.
It's a little bit more than just the whole cut and dry Freemasonry symbol, or that's a Crowley symbol, you know?
Yeah, and even us now, just being alive in this time and doing this type of thing, we're affecting it too and changing it and molding it. Yeah. I mean, with our opinions and perspectives.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I believe, exactly how this stuff came to pass down through time. over and over and over again. I think all of us, as a collective consciousness, are kind of taking these things and learning them and shaping them and molding them into what they are today, what modern magic is today.
Or even helping helping people remember things that were lost in the past.
Yes. I think there's like nothing new under the sun. Everybody is already seeing this. It's just re-remembering it. I guess
remembering it or re-understanding it,
Yes.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that for sure, Megan.
Yeah.
I love it. I think that was perfect. I mean, it's going to keep the episode just about an hour, or a little bit under, but I think that, like, again, this couldn't have gone any better than it did. I think we did it perfect, and I appreciate all your help. And
you're welcome.
And again, like I was saying before, we're going to be doing a few other things like this. I think a couple of rituals and at least 1 or 2 other books. I think we spoke about it. So me and Megan will be covering more stuff. We will also be doing another tarot type thing. We're going to be covering a tarot deck that she had grabbed. And me, her, and somebody else are going to cover that as well. And I think that will be fun. And that'll be interesting,
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to even talk about it.
Yeah.
It's super cool, guys.
Yeah.
Something really rare.
Yeah, I think it will be fun. Yeah, and like you said, it's rare. It is rare, so
yes,
it'll be a good time, and hopefully I might be getting Louie on for that with us as well, so that's something to look forward to. I always like talking with Louie. And, that's about it. Oh, one thing, and I really hate doing this, especially when I have a guest on, but it's kind of hard for me to do it without a guest on. Because even if I'm covering it, I'm still covering it with a guest. But because I do hate that I'm bugging for my own, not bugging, but I'm asking for my own show. I know I mentioned it maybe like a week or 2 ago in a show that dropped, but I'm going to just reiterate it now. It does cost me to run this show $700 about a year between Spreaker and StreamYard. So if anybody feel kind enough to want to donate, I do have a Cash App and a Venmo in the bottom, and people can use that to donate. The show is going to keep going, regardless if I get it or not, and me saying that is probably why I haven't gotten any. But again, like I said, your money isn't needed to keep the show going. I will keep it going just because I enjoy it and I'm learning, so it will keep going regardless. But if people want to be nice enough and try to help with the cost of the show, I'm willing to take donations, and links for that are in the bottom. So enough of that spiel. I really do actually hate doing that.
No, it's like this.
It is what it is, though, I guess.
We have to, it costs money and time and stuff. And sometimes, to be compensated for our time, it really helps because this stuff, we're doing the legwork for people. And it makes it easier for them to learn things. And to do that, it takes a lot of time on our part. So there's nothing wrong with asking for donations in that at all.
Some of the time spent on some of the series I've done.
I'm telling you, it's hours and hours and hours, guys. Like, this stuff takes a lot of work.
I've actually, I used to in my shows, sometimes make intros. And, I do kind of miss doing that because a lot of them were, very deeply occult to me. But, even stuff that, I used to do with, the occult rejects, I've even put that to the side because I'm just spending so much more time now actually researching shit that it's just I can't even be bothered with that stuff anymore. And again, I guess it's my own fault because I want to cover those topics, but you are right. There has been some things that I've done where it's just damn, that took a long time to do. Yeah, and it feels good that people are into it and they want to support and they're into the information. So definitely. So that's my maybe I'll mention it one other time and then that'll be it for the year. But if you feel kind enough and want to, you can donate. And I guess that's it out of me. Again, Megan, let people know where they can find your stuff. And again, the links will be in the bottom, but let them so people listening they can hear.
My name is Megan. I'm 7 Degrees of Wisdom. Again, sorry, I'm reiterating that. But just in case you missed it at the beginning, some people come in at the end. So 7 Degrees of Wisdom, the number 7, and then Degrees of Wisdom spelled out on Instagram and Facebook. I also have a TikTok, and we'll have a YouTube channel as well. And Nick will put all that stuff. Yes. Definitely let you guys know when I get all that stuff up and running. But my main pages are Instagram and Facebook, and you guys can get a hold of me there if you're interested in any of my services. I do tarot readings and consultations as well.
Awesome. And thank you very much again for
You're
joining me
welcome.
for this episode. And there'll be plenty more to come, especially we still have one more tarot series left. And after we're done doing that, then we're definitely going to start covering more stuff. And that is the end of another NY Patriot episode. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.